All right, let's get this party started. Welcome to 2021 Port of Bellingham Commission meeting for the first meeting of the year. I'd like to close the executive session and open the public meeting. Welcome everybody. First and foremost, I'd like to see if we've got everybody in attendance. Commissioner Briscoe.
Here.
Mr. Shepard.
Here.
Commissioner Bell is here. Welcome everybody. With that, I'd like to know if there's any public comments. We'll open the meeting with that. If anybody's got a comment, unmute yourself and I will call on you. Anybody have something they would like to say?
Yes, Commissioner.
Chip?
Yes. Hi, yes. My name is Chip Burgess. I'm a regional representative for the Laborers International Union of North America. Speaking tonight on behalf of Local 292. Reached out to all three commissioners. We've had the opportunity to speak to Commissioner Shepard. Hoping in the next week or two, we'd have the opportunity to sit down with Commissioner M. Bell and Commissioner Briscoe. If that's a possibility, I've sent an email. I can follow up. I'd be happy to, but we'd like to set up a meeting and talk about apprenticeship utilization language for larger port projects in the future. Thank you very much.
Quick question, Chip. Would that be a Zoom meeting or in person?
Zoom meeting.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, just with COVID, that's kind of how we're operating.
Okay, wasn't sure.
Hey Chip, I'm good.
Sorry, Ken, I forgot you were leading the mission now. I was waiting for Michael to start things out and then you roll it out. So Happy New Year and good luck.
I don't know if the good luck is the right sentiment. Yeah, so Chip, I'm available anytime. I'm out of pocket the 14th through about the 18th.
Okay.
But, you know, this week or the following, I'm good for a Zoom meeting. Love to talk.
Okay, Ken. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Anybody else?
Back. Yep.
Yes.
Say that again.
I will get back to you.
I love Zoom. Anybody else? Seeing no other unmuted microphones, we'll assume that we are done. And we'll move on to the regular meeting. Let me get this out of the way. I want to announce the meetings for the following couple of weeks. We are going to have the Marine Advisory Committee meeting on January 12th. It'll be a Zoom meeting. It'll be at 6 p.m. And then we'll have the Bellingham International Airport Advisory Committee. It's a combined TAC and BIAC meeting on January 14th at 4 p.m. So if you're interested in the Marine Advisory Committee, it's January 12th, 6 p.m. The airport, January 14th at 4 p.m. and they're Zoom meetings. You can go to the website to get information on those. With that, we move on to the consent agenda. Carrie. Oh, we had you, but we don't anymore. So I would move that we approve the consent agenda. If there is anything anybody would like to remove from this, would you please let me know?
I don't have anything.
No, I'm good, Ken.
I just have one that I want to kind of discuss a little bit, and that is the trash containers over on the Bellwether for 12 Bellwether and the Bayview building. It seems to me that with the revision on the construction on those buildings, why can't we just do one recycling center in that main parking lot and do away with the one on the 12 Bellwether building? It seems to be a centralized location. It's a large location. It's easy to access. If we're going to do some improvements, why don't we just do one big improvement and have everybody use that? Just as an anecdotal note, I didn't use the one on the side of the building when it was there. Moving it to the garage made it easier to use. for that building, but doesn't it make sense just to have one and just cut our costs and do one well with all of the recycling and removal in one place?
Commissioner, we've got Judy Harvey here. She can attempt to answer that question. If the answer is satisfactory, we'll leave it on the consent agenda and vote. If it's not satisfactory, we'll pull it off the consent agenda for further discussion.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Judy Harvey, Senior Property Manager. Commissioner Bell, we can look into that. I think that there could be some potential pushback from the Bayview Center building tenants. It would be a much further walk in inclement weather for them to travel with their trash from the Bayview Center building all the way over to the existing 11 Bellwether building recycling. There's also the logistics of that 11 Bellwether existing trash enclosure. It's located between the Bellwether building and Gate 12 Gatehouse. It's also shared with the marine moorage customers at Gate 12. I do not know if it would be cheaper. We could certainly analyze that and figure it out. It may require a larger footprint as far as the investigation as well. The proposal today before you is to add a canopy and exterior lighting to the existing trash enclosure between Bellwether and Gate 12, and to reallocate the funds from the canceled Bayview project, $25K, to the Bellwether enclosure project so that we can award the low bid and finish the project. But certainly we can look into the other if that is the commission direction.
This is more of a gut feel. Do you think we'd get a ton of blowback out of 12 Bellwether for that?
I do, and the reason being is currently they don't have to go out in none of the tenants in that building even have to go out in any inclement weather. They simply go down the elevator and put their trash in the proper disposal totes and cardboard. I think it'd be a stretch. I certainly could try, but I think it'd be a real stretch to have the Bayview Center building tenants get on board with that.
Yeah, I remember the old days when we actually used to have to go outside on that before you moved them underneath the garage. Remember the old days, Judy?
Yes.
Anyway, I don't really have a big dog in that hunt. I just thought I'd explore the questions. So I'm ready to go with the consent agenda as is.
I've got a question to ask on that one. So are we adding a pickup spot with this for the truck has to go to another spot to pick this stuff up? So he stops at the one and we go under, or are these combined?
You're referencing both the Bayview Center building and the Bellwether building pickups?
Yeah, we're adding a new pickup spot, correct, by doing this?
No, it's an
No.
existing pickup spot that we're just covering.
Oh, okay. Very good. Very good. I thought we were adding a new pickup and I was wondering what that was going to cost. Very good. Thank you.
I had a different vision in my head, so I'm willing to let it go.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah, that'd be you.
consent agenda as is. Commissioner Shepard, do you have any comments?
Nope, I'm all ready to go.
All in favor? Commissioner Briscoe?
Aye.
Commissioner Shepard?
I as well.
Bell is also an aye. Passes unanimously. That was an unnecessary diversion. Now we start with presentation.
On the same highway. It's okay.
I'd like to ask Brian Gorin to do his presentation on Millworks.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Let's see if I can get this pulled up and I'll confirm that everybody can see it. All right. Everybody see the opening slide there?
I can see it.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you, Commissioners. Brian Gorin, Director of Environmental and Planning Services. This is an update we've got for you today on a project that we have ongoing in the waterfront district at the former Georgia Pacific Mill property. As I'm sure you recall, at the last commission meeting in early December, Harcourt provided the commission with an update on some of their work that they have underway right now, as well as what they see coming down the line over the next few years. This is a project that's also in the downtown waterfront, but is actually outside of the Harcourt master development area. And it's a project that is being led by the Port of Bellingham under an integrated planning grant with the Department of Ecology. Gina Stark in Economic Development, myself are the primary port staff. Then we also have Neil McCarthy from RMC Architects, who is available tonight as well. He's our primary architect and site planning representative. And then our project partners at Millworks, which is also a part of the Whatcom Community Foundation, Maury Ingram is also available here tonight as well. So I'm going to go through the majority of the slides, but if you have any questions, I may need to defer to the subject experts there, or at the end of the presentation, if you have any questions, you know, all of us are available to address things. So what I was going to go through here today is really focusing primarily on the integrated planning grant work. So there is a lot of work happening here that the Millworks team that Maury and their group is on is being done in parallel. That's some very site-specific work, some funding mechanisms, some other community outreach work that they're starting to pull together, but isn't really all the way there yet. So, but we have some work that we've been doing kind of regardless of that under this integrated planning grant. I'll talk a little bit more about what that grant covers. So that's going to be the primary focus of this presentation. And we anticipate that as we move this forward, that there's going to be another opportunity to come back to the commission, with Millworks probably being the lead in the discussion on what their vision in a lot more detail than what I'll talk about tonight. But as part of our integrated planning grant with ecology, we have, you know, a public outreach component and making sure we keep the public and the commission informed on this work. So that's the primary focus of this update. So the things I'll go through here today is just a little bit of background and context. The commission's familiar with this project, but I'll give a little bit of background on kind of where we're at. Some of the work that's been done to date on the grant. Talk at a high level about the Millworks collaborative project that we're working on. That's kind of the model that we're using to test as part of this integrated planning grant, or IPG. And then highlight kind of what's come out of this work with an initial proposed site layout, and then highlighting some of the next steps. So the Integrated Planning Grant Program, or IPG program, with the Department of Ecology is something that's been around for a few years. It's been really successful, as primarily really with smaller communities in Washington. A lot of the communities in Eastern Washington utilize these grants, maybe for sites that it's part of their brownfields program. It's not just from the cleanup side; it's actually cleanup and redevelopment together. And they've looked at like small corners that, you know, the intersections that may have had 2 or 3 gas stations that are now abandoned, that are underutilized, or small industrial parcels that are kind of maybe were at one point on the outskirts of town, and now with growth, there are these sites that need to be redeveloped but may have contamination. So communities that maybe don't have a large planning department, or the capacity to take on a large planning effort. So these grants have been focused on those types of programs, and they're 100% funded, so there's no local match needed, and they've been really successful. And with that in mind, because of the success, the governor's office and the Department of Ecology started looking at if there was a way to leverage these types of grants to also look at addressing some of the housing issues, and specifically affordable housing. Are there ways to look at brownfield redevelopment that could also support affordable housing? So we worked for a few years to work with Ecology to put an application in and receive this $200,000 integrated planning grant. It's called the Healthy Housing IPG, actually, because it's focused on some housing components. And these grants are really flexible on what they allow you to do. They can be everything from really high level planning, programming, zoning questions, community engagement, to very site-specific work. So they provide a lot of flexibility, which is great for the local communities. They also have to be part of a brownfields redevelopment opportunity zone, which actually the Port Commission and the City Council had a foresight a number of years ago to designate the whole waterfront district as a opportunity zone under the brownfields program. So we were eligible for this grant. And because we already had a lot of that kind of planning work done as part of the sub-area plan and the waterfront district work, we didn't really need to look at zoning or height limits or programming. So we really wanted to take this and be more focused on the site itself. So the work that and I'll talk through it in a little more detail here, the things that we focused on was doing some expanded environmental and geotechnical investigation, and then some very specific site programming and analysis to see how do these concepts fit together on the site. And then we'll have ongoing public outreach. And this meeting is kind of part of that, is to start getting the word out that this project is advancing. So the project team for the IPG has included port staff, RMC architects, Aspect Consulting, who's been our environmental consultant for the site for a number of years, Mercy Housing, who's an affordable housing group that is very well respected in the region. They've got projects in Seattle, and they've done the Eleanor Apartments here in Bellingham in downtown, and I think they're underway with one right now in Barclay. And then not part of the IPG team, but definitely our project partners, has been the Millworks team led by the Whatcom Community Foundation. So if you're familiar with this site, but just to go over a little bit of background, we focused this on the Lignan parcel, which is at the intersection of Laurel and Cornwall, highlighted in the green box there. It's about 3 acres in size. It's located on the GP West Matka cleanup site, and it's part of the Chlor-Alkali Remedial Action Unit, or RAU, and I'll have a slide on that that details that in a little more detail. The good thing about that is that that's part of the site that has not gone through the environmental cleanup process yet. On the other side of the railroad tracks there, in the upper portion of that photo, is the pulp and tissue mill, which has gone through the formal cleanup. We did some soil removal, we did some capping, and then, as you know, development's underway right now. This parcel is part of the Chlor-Alkali RAU, which includes the shipping terminal and the log pond area, and we're underway with a cleanup plan development, but it hasn't been accepted by ecology or formalized yet. So in addition to that, in 2020, last year we did the building removal, so that the existing warehouse that was there has been removed. The foundations are still in place, pending some of the environmental cleanup work. The other really interesting part of this project that's important to consider is this is a gateway parcel. This is one of the 2 entrances to the site, to the downtown waterfront, between Granary and Roeder, and then here at Chestnut and Laurel. So it's a key entrance to the site. So we would keep that in mind as we're looking at what we can do here. And then, as you know, for the past couple of years, the Millworks group has been, talking to the port about this site specifically for a potential food campus. And we'll talk through what that looks like after the past few years of work, and led by the Whatcom Community Foundation and the Millworks group. And then back in 2019, the port entered into an exclusive negotiating agreement with Millworks to look at this parcel specifically for not only the food campus, but also this affordable housing component.
Brian, this is complementary to that project then?
Yes, it is. Yeah, this is dovetails, and they're part of the team working closely with us on it. So we've just taken that ENA and that exclusive negotiating agreement, advanced this project with the IPG as a way to test that specific project. So this figure here, not to get distracted with everything on here, the only purpose of this, if there's taking anything away, this is the Chlor-Alkali Remedial Action Unit. And all I wanted to highlight here is that it's a very complicated site. If you look over by the log pond and the shipping terminal, all those colored boxes, there's a lot happening here. There's elemental mercury, there's high pH in the groundwater, there's petroleum contamination, there's all these different things going on over there, which makes it a complicated site for the port to address. The good news is the area in the lower right there, highlighted in the blue box, that's the parcel that we're looking at, and it just happens to be part of that bigger, more complex Chlor-Alkali RAU. So the Lignan parcel actually is really simple compared to everything else there. That's a site that has shallow soil contamination 2 to 4 feet below the existing surface. It's primarily CPAHs, which are really, they're bound to the soil. They're not very mobile. It has some metals in soil, and then a small area of dissolved metals in groundwater. So relatively speaking, from the cleanup projects that we have in our portfolio, and then this site in particular, this one's really easy to address. Typically, the approach here would be to cap this area or remove that soil and take it to your standard landfill. So pretty straightforward approach. And we're underway with the development of that plan with ecology right now. So
Brian, would that happen as a remedial action that would be separate, or how exactly would this cleanup get underway?
Yeah, typically, yeah, this would be just something the port would undertake, and we would do it kind of like we've done everything else. As I go through these next few slides, that'll highlight how these two things can get combined. So it'll be done as a remedial action for sure, but it may be done a little bit differently where we have a cleanup and a known project being done at the same time. So, but that's one of the things we're going to be looking at.
Brian, I have a question.
Yeah, Commissioner.
I didn't quite hear you very clearly, but you said we could cap it or remove the soil and take it where?
Just to your standard landfill. So this municipal waste landfill, or called a subtitle D landfill. So it's your standard, not a non-hazardous waste landfill.
So it can just go for landfill somewhere else?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, at a regulated landfill, like where all our garbage would go to. Okay,
very good. Thank you.
Is that because the metals are so low, or the concentrations are so low?
That's right. Yeah, they're really relative. It's contaminated enough that we'd have to address it. Like you couldn't just have it on the surface, but it's not enough to fall into any hazardous waste category.
That helps.
So yeah, it really does. So
could that be used for ground leveling then, and then capping?
Well, yeah, depending. So we'll get through this in a little bit, but typically we had anticipated it. Probably we would have capped it. But because we know that there's a project that's going to come in and need foundations and need to excavate to have a project built, that would just get all torn out. So the ideal would be, well, let's get it all out as part of this project, and then it'll go to the landfill, because if we capped it, then the project coming in behind us would just have to take it out anyway. So we'll likely, in this scenario, look at a removal action.
That makes a lot of sense.
Thank you.
Yeah. So some of the work that we've gotten completed as part of this integrated planning grant, we did a more detailed environmental investigation. That previous figure that showed the orange kind of blob, that was from the RIFS work. And, we had defined the area with a few samples, so we knew there was contamination, but for a project-specific design, you want to get a lot more information. So we did a number of test pits throughout the area. And what we were looking for was two things. One was to define the footprint a little bit better and make sure there were no surprises, anything that we didn't know about that could be a big game changer. And the footprint of the area did expand, which is not surprising, the area of contamination, but the types of contamination and the issues and how you would address it, there were no surprises. So that was really good news. We also then completed a geotechnical investigation. We know that we're in seismically active area. We know we're on fill that's liquefiable. So we utilized this Ipg to get a better understanding on the geotechnical considerations for the types of buildings that we anticipate building down there. So we had a geotechnical engineer look at the project and look at the soils and have made some preliminary recommendations that the project, any project moving forward, can utilize. And then we got into the kind of fun stuff, which was really how do you analyze the site for these particular uses? And I'll walk through some of the things that RMC pulled together. So what are some of the opportunities and constraints? How do you do connectivity to and through the site? How do you access it and park it? And then came up with some preliminary layouts that we think work for this. And then ongoing, like I've mentioned, ongoing community outreach. So these next few slides show some of the site analysis work that RMC has done. So really basic stuff, but really important. It's like a microclimate for the site. So where is the solar access? How would you lay out a site to maximize solar access, not just for power generation or anything like that, but just to making sure you're getting light in the buildings and through the site in areas so you're not blocking out and shading out different things. How are the winds oriented, and how would you orient certain open space that could be utilized at multiple times of the year? Then things like view analysis. So there are existing view corridors that go through the site that were part of the sub-area plan. Primarily the Maple Street view corridor, which highlights keeping downtown to be able to see the tops of those orange tile tanks from downtown. And then a view corridor, both of those are shown in green, that goes along the rail line that really doesn't cut through the site, but is another view corridor. They also looked at potential views. So the arc of the purple arcs that show where you'd have nice views of the water or the islands. And then one thing I would like to highlight is that really you could argue there could be some pretty cool views back towards downtown as well. I mean, downtown has some interesting buildings, and there's some value in kind of looking back at the community. So those are some opportunities there. looking at connectivity, not just for vehicle access, but also pedestrian and bicycle access. Looking at not just access to the site, but also through it. So the sidewalks shown in solid orange there, and then potential pedestrian access through the site. You know, we've said all along for the waterfront district that it's important to not have two distinct districts of the downtown and the waterfront district. When this gets built out, we want it to be a connected kind of area that isn't feel separate. So having access through the site, kind of shown in some of those dashed lines, may be an advantage to making a more solid connection to downtown. Oh, and then, sorry, and also highlight, if that railroad ever moves, also highlighting that there should be a connection to the downtown waterfront if the rail line also ever moves.
So Brian, on this slide back,
yep.
Are those pedestrian crossings over the tracks meant to envision the railroad moving, or are those with the existing tracks there?
No, sorry. Yeah, that was it. That's what I was referencing, is that if the line ever moves, there should be future connections into the core of the downtown waterfront.
Okay. And is the only option for entrance and for egress in between on Laurel between the tracks and Cornwall, or is there any opportunities to have any other egress point off Cornwall into the site?
Yeah, that's a perfect segue to this slide, which is the constraints. So, you know, it's a big site, 3 acres, but there are definitely some constraints. So we have the rail line on one side shown in purple. We have grade changes shown in green there, where even right from immediately from where the site starts ramping up to the bridge there, you've got a grade change which limits that access point. And then you have a bridge that is actually undersized at this point and only has a sidewalk on one side. So the constraints really do limit the access in and out of the site. As far as we could tell, there may be some other creative ways to approach this, but from what I understand, the only real feasible access is that one beige arrow going in from Laurel for vehicle access. So there's some constraints to work with. So those were the site analysis that then the team took and said, okay, given those conditions, does the millworks concept that Commissioner Bell had asked about, does that still work? Is that something that we could do here? And added into it, including some housing components. So the elements that they looked at, and the next few slides show the layout, but was to have an affordable housing component, affordable/workforce housing component. And that would be, and I would defer to Gina on this, she's the housing expert, but that terminology is basically affordable housing is 30% to 80% of the AMI, which is the area of median income, priced at that point. And then workforce housing is kind of like up to 100% of the AMI. So having a combination of affordable and workforce housing, could it accommodate about 80 units? And that's from what I understand from the Mercy housing experts, that's kind of the sweet spot for the affordable housing is about 80 units. They've also evaluated maybe the possibility of an ownership model that could be added on to this with where we maybe have the top floor be an affordable housing condominium scenario, maybe something that's modeled through the Colshan Community Land Trust model, but through condos. That's one that's really complicated. The team's really dedicated to looking at that and have been working closely. It may or may not work, but it's one that it looks like it has some potential and could be a really unique opportunity here. Some of the other components of the housing included an early learning center and a playground that could serve the folks that live there, as well as the community and the folks that worked in the adjacent food campus. It could include common space like bike storage and offices, laundry, and community room with a kitchenette kind of area. The other elements that were on the table is the food campus, and that included a large or a series of kitchens, a large commercial kitchen, a demonstration kitchen, and some shared space that could be used by caterers and food trucks and that sort of thing, that folks that need to have a commercial kitchen that they could use. Farm to table agricultural processing area, warehouse and loading bays, and then event space and offices and retail, including like maybe a small grocery that could be in this area, and then rooftop open space and gardens. So those are the elements that were then taken and packaged into these preferred layouts. We had a number of layouts that we kind of batted back and forth. And here's what has kind of risen to the top for now. And keep in mind, this is, IPG, integrated planning grant level detail. So this is not the final approach. This is just saying, does this fit? And do these elements work? And so this is the ground floor component. And if you look at the corner of Laurel and Cornwall here, the housing component would be the closest to the intersection there. And on the ground floor, you'd have the community room and maybe some housing, and then the early learning center, including a drop-off and loading zone here, and then a playground. On the ground floor of the food campus on the other side here would include these kind of multiple kitchens, the shared kitchen and large commercial kitchen. So Commissioner Shepard, to your question, there is potential for another access point, but really for loading and unloading exclusively, not really for site-wide use. But that could take some of the pressure off of that one access point. And that could be where you could have loading bays to service the warehouse, and then other spaces, lobbies, and restrooms and that sort of thing.
Do you think that's far enough from the tracks there, Brian, that works with all the modeling?
That does, yeah. That's outside of the footprint of the track and outside the safety zone and all that. The construction would have to be coordinated and make sure that there's, working really closely with the railroad to make sure that it's not getting too close. But that's that's taking that into consideration.
Okay.
And then the parking is a big question. This is one where for this site we've anticipated that we'd have a two-story or two-level structured parking to accommodate both the food campus and the housing unit. So this shows on the back side of the site here is the ground floor of a structured parking, and then going to the next slide shows kind of going up back to the housing is really just a typical floor. You'd have up to 80 units that could be configured total in about 5 floors. There's that optional 6th floor with the ownership model being there. The good news there is there'd be a similar layout, and if it didn't work, that 6th floor just wouldn't go through completely to construction. The food campus on the other side here on the upper floor is really a much smaller space, mostly focused on offices that could be used for the folks occupying the food campus, as well as maybe other nonprofits, that sort of thing, shared office space, an event space that could look down and be open to the demonstration kitchen that could be really a cool component to an event center, and then a large rooftop plaza and rooftop gardens. The other level of parking then would be accessed here. And then one cool component that came out of this was, and this, again, these are all just ideas at this point, is that if for this connectivity of pedestrians, if and when that Cornwall Bridge was replaced and that sidewalk access was along that side, you could have a really interesting pedestrian bridge that could connect to this rooftop plaza. It could give a different feel and connection to downtown, views out to the water, and then a pedestrian connection into the downtown waterfront. So that's the level of work that we've done under the integrated planning grant. What the main 3 goals were to say, are there environmental conditions that would preclude this from happening that we didn't understand or didn't know about? And that environmental investigation confirmed we're really in a pretty good spot there. Are there geotechnical issues that would be much too difficult to build this? And the answer there was no. I think this is a feasible project. And then lastly is, do all these elements fit on this site? And are there ways to configure it? And the answer is yeah, they do. They fit, and that we could advance this to the next level. And this would be a much higher level of detail, architectural renderings, much more detail going into it. But those big questions are answered, which I think gives us confidence to say we can recommend that this can get taken to the next steps.
Brian, are we still back on that map, or are we holding a carve out for potential railroad relocation on this? It seems complicated to hold this piece and limit potential development with a big unknown. The railroad just spent a lot of money redoing the current spot that the railroad is on. And do we actually expect them to move anytime?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, we do have this area that's kind of shown in kind of just white here that goes from this dashed line. And can you see my cursor moving? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
So from this dash line up to this is kind of the reserved area for the future railroad relocation. And I would agree that it's a big unknown. But if we build anything there, then it's precluded from ever happening. So what we've tried to do is think about ways that we could. The big question is on this parking. Could we do some superficial parking and maybe utilize that space and not build the structured parking until the railroad relocates? And then we'd have to maybe build the structured parking or have some way to do that, accommodate that. And so what we were thinking is that let's at least see what fits on here. And assuming that the railroad would be relocated, could we still do all this? And the answer is yes. So we may have some flexibility on that in the short term, and knowing that in the long term, we still could have a feasible project.
I would just add to that, Commissioner, that if the railroad is moved, this site becomes much more connected to the rest of the main GP campus that's being developed.
Sure. There's some very attractive aspects of relocating that railroad. It just, right now, it seems so far off from possible, and it's challenging, as we know, to get a straight answer or any answer sometimes out of the railroad to find out which way we should be planning. So I think sounds like we're doing the best we can. If there's any creative thinking we can do, I hate holding land that may never materialize, but I do recognize the benefits if we are able to make that relocation happen.
Yeah, we tried to think of a lot of different things we could do there in the interim that maybe wouldn't preclude it. Like maybe that's the area where we have the food trucks rodeo area, or we maybe have, that be parking / food carts and events that can happen there, or, that kind of thing that wouldn't be permanent, but we could adjust if the railroad relocated.
Yeah. Okay.
Additionally.
All right. Well, thanks, Commissioner. Then what we got here is just kind of the final slide here is next steps. We had anticipated when we entered in that exclusive negotiating agreement with the ENA that we would have this all wrapped up in 2020, but 2020 happened and everything slowed down a little bit. The good news was we all were able to continue this work and move it, advance it. So a lot of work got done, and I think the next steps we see here are to start working closely with the Department of Ecology on the cleanup side of things. We've been keeping them informed, but there's more work to be done there to make sure it's coordinated. We'll have to start looking at creating these parcels so that we can have some kind of property transaction, whether it's a sale or a long-term lease. And we're underway with that. We have other parcels that we're working on in the Waterfront District, and we've rolled that into that effort. Then Millworks in parallel, like I mentioned before, they've got a lot of work going on, some of their detailed programming of the food campus. They're also looking at their funding mechanisms, which could include grants, the tax credit financing for the affordable housing component. There's opportunity zone investment that they're working on. So a lot of the financing component of this is coming together from the Millworks side of things. And then once all that gets pulled together, we'll have to work on some specific agreements with the Department of Ecology, because this goes back to that point of, is this done as a combined project? If it was just the port doing it, it'd be just like our typical cleanups, right? But if this is a combined cleanup and redevelopment with not only the port, but with an outside partner, Millworks or something like that, who's doing what, and who gets grant funding? What are the legal obligations? The good news is there's a project that's already done this in Seattle, and we've built upon the successes and failures from that and have some lessons learned in ecology. And the AG's office is really dialed into how to do it a little bit better. So we think we can build on that. And then assuming we get all those pulled together, is hopefully by mid-year 2021, we'll have this all pulled together and have some type of property transaction. They'll be ready to go for the commission to consider whether that's a sale or a lease. Right now, it sounds like the team's leaning towards a sale, and that this would be a property that then would be owned and operated by the food campus and the housing place. And then if that all falls in place, then we'd be moving forward into the cleanup and redevelopment at the same time. And then there's ongoing community outreach that will happen throughout this. We have these types of updates. Department of Ecology will have a very formalized process for their comment periods. And then Millworks will do a great job of a variety of different community events and outreach and open houses and really getting a feel for how this fits within the community. So those are the next steps. And with that, our team is available to address any questions you might have.
Thank you, Brian. That's amazing. And it's so gratifying to see some flesh being put on these bones. It's moving in a great fashion, albeit not as fast as we'd like to see it, but still amazed by it. So any more comments, Commissioner Briscoe?
I had a question for Brian on can you speak to the property transaction again? I didn't quite clearly hear what you said about leaning one way or the other there.
Yeah, sorry, Commissioner. Yeah, we've anticipated that this would be either a sale or a long-term lease. We've worked with the Millworks team and have kind of gone back and forth. It sounds like they're leaning towards a property sale and acquiring the property versus a lease, and that would ultimately be a commission decision. And this is an area that's in the downtown waterfront, which we've always anticipated would be similar to the Harcourt transactions, where we would be selling these properties. It's in the mixed use zoning. It's for residents, not really the type of things that the court does. So that's how we've anticipated it, but that's ultimately a commission decision.
When you say they're leaning towards a purchase, is that a deal killer?
I don't know. I think I can take that back to the team and see but I think that's the preferred approach, as I say.
Commissioners, I don't believe it would be a deal killer. I think we, from the very beginning, intended on selling that property when we acquired it from GP, much like the Harcourt transaction.
I didn't necessarily mean from our end.
Well, I think our point is we'll work with the Millworks folks, whatever form or vehicle is best for them. We can make work for us, whether that be a lease or a sale.
Probably helps them get financing if it's a sale, correct?
You hear that, but we have a lot of tenants that have been successful getting financing with our leased property as well.
Yeah, and I think the affordable housing component, I think, is a question. I think that the ownership for the financing for the affordable housing piece is key. The food campus may be different, but that's one of the key pieces that the Millworks group is working on right now. So we would come back to the commission with more information on that once they've kind of firmed up their financing.
Yeah, if you just want a general impression, for me right now, it's just whatever makes it work. This is a beautiful vision, and personally, I'd like to see it go forward. So,
great,
Commissioner Shepard.
Yeah, I'm thrilled. This is a kind of project that really gets me excited and gets me really hopeful for the type of development we're going to see down there. So I echo that excitement and interest in being available for us to do what we can to help this project be successful. I think it's really benefited from this team approach. And I think you guys have just done a great job of utilizing this state funding to take a kind of complex idea and really start putting it into practice. So for me, I'm thrilled. I really like that 6th floor home ownership opportunity. I just want to reiterate that I think one of the important ways that we're able to provide long-term economic benefits to families in our community is giving them an opportunity to build equity through home ownership. And if we're able to do that on a project like this by going up one additional floor, I think there's a lot of benefit in there. So I hope we can continue to see if that pencils and see if that can be part of this final project.
Great.
I do want to caution that free markets do have a tendency to drive pricing. And as you go up and as things get more attractive, once you make a sale, you lose control of that property, and that no longer becomes affordable, especially on a site near the waterfront with a view corridor. All of a sudden, what you thought was affordable becomes marketplace priced, and that's a completely different animal.
It is.
If I may,
Put that in the back of your head. There are probably some things we can do.
Well, I think the grant might have some assurances that dictate the pricing, does it not, Brian?
Yeah, or I think that, I don't know, this is one of the more complicated pieces of this project, really, is that question. And a big part of that they're working through like how you could do restrictions on that. The Colson Community Land Trust is involved in this discussion, and they do that model, right? But with single family residences, that kind of thing would be a unique scenario, but it would be one where we'd anticipate it would be built into to whatever covenants or whatever are on this project.
Yeah, I just wanted to add there, the Colson Land Trust model, they currently secure permanent affordability of over 150 homes in Whatcom County right now. And they have that built-in model where a home is purchased and there's a requirement on its affordability to the next buyer as well. So that community land trust model operates throughout the country and does lock in that long-term affordability, and is certainly a viable model for us to see put in place here.
Michael, when you say it locks in that, how long does it lock that in for? Does it lock it in at the level that the first people bought it at, or does that change?
Yeah, great question. It locks it into for perpetuity. So that model puts a cap on the per year increase. And so when I participated and I bought my first home with the Colson Community Land Trust, and it gave a 1.5% increase per year based on the initial mortgage that I took out for that home. And so it was able to increase, but slightly over time, so that people could gain equity through improvements to the property, and owning something for over time. You can pass it on to your children and continue building that equity over years, but you're going to limit the amount of profit you can ultimately make on flipping a home for a resale.
Does it ever adjust for actual market rates 10 years down the road, or do they do a reassessment at any juncture?
That's not built into the model. Yeah.
Yeah, so if housing goes up 20% in any given 5-year period, the contract is still locked in at a 1.5 increase.
Yeah, that's the current model. Of course, any model is open for revision if needs. But I think the goal is to create that separate track of permanently affordable housing, which is difficult to achieve in a different way.
Yeah. And there's no perfect algorithm, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Brian, I just had another question about kind of off-site. If we have any opportunities, I've brought up before about can we use this IPG model anywhere else? Is there a particular window of application for IPGs, or is it a rolling thing, or does the ecology have to contact us and identify a property first? How does that work?
Yeah, no, there is a set time for grant applications, and actually they're coming up on another round here, I think by the end of January. I did bring up with ecology, the representatives that we're working with, is whether some ideas would be eligible for an IPG that we talked about before, of looking kind of countywide almost at potential sites. The feedback was it has to be a site-specific established site, so that wouldn't be eligible for that concept wouldn't be eligible for that funding source. But there are other funding sources that are out there that they really kind of like that idea, and so there may be other opportunities for that. If we have a site if there is a site that is known that an IPG could be applicable to, we're kind of actually shaking the bushes right now to see if there's something that might fit that again for this new funding round. Nothing's rising to the top right now, but if you've got everything in mind, let us know, and we're kind of looking to see.
Like that site with all the big white tarps that I already told the mayor he should consider.
Yeah.
Does anyone else having trouble hearing Brian? I can't hear him very well.
He's a little bit quiet, but I just turned up my volume a little bit, and I can still hear.
Sorry, Commissioner. Yeah, I'll try to speak up. I pulled my mic here a little bit closer, and I don't have another microphone. I haven't had any feedback from previously that this mic is honking out on me. But that was the commission. That's the update. So any other questions? Otherwise, I can wrap it up.
I have none. Bobby?
I have none.
Michael?
I'm all set.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Brian. Now we're going to move on to some action items.
Can you hear
Put on
me,
your
Ken?
seatbelts. First action item. Carrie, are you around or do you want me to do it?
Well, I can do it if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Perfect. Motion by the Port Commission to approve the Airport Industrial Park lease between the Port of Bellingham and APP Impex Inc., DBA Advanced Performance Parts, for premises located at 3928 Williamson Way, Bellingham, Washington, also described as lease area number 7 of the BLI Airport General Binding Site Plan.
Well, Noah, you get to be the first action item of the year. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Thank you, Commissioners. Good evening. My name is Noah Carlson, Property Manager here at the Port of Bellingham. This action pertains to a new lease agreement between the Port of Bellingham and APP Impex Inc., doing business as Advanced Performance Parts. Over the past couple of months, real estate has been working with APP to bring this transaction forward to the Commission. In addition, APP has been working with Gina Stark in Economic Development to explore potential funding programs that might be available. With your approval, APP will be occupying 12,637 square feet of the former Army National Guard building located at 3928 Williamson Way in the Airport Industrial Park for a lease term of 5 years. The base rent for the first year will be $6,336 per month. Year 2 will increase to $7,847 per month. And years 3 through 5 will increase to $8,871 per month, plus applicable leasehold tax. We're really excited to have this prospective tenant come to the port as they anticipate to bring 20 plus jobs over the next 2 years. It's staff's recommendation to approve this transaction. We are pleased to have Jeremy Barris, the president and founder of the company, with us this evening. We do have a short presentation that he will be showing that will provide a little bit of background about his company and what's to come. So I would like to thank Jeremy for joining us this evening, and I'll go ahead and share my screen once he's introduced himself.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for making time for me. My name is Jeremy Barris. I'm originally from the UK. I grew up in Europe, worked for a big multinational, which was active in the automotive, aerospace, and defense industries for many, many years, and was sent all over the world by this multinational to run various different facilities and operations over a 15, 18-year period. I was sent then to Detroit, Michigan to run their facilities there. And in 2002, decided to strike out on my own, move to California and set up my own group of companies, starting with the first one, Advanced Performance Parts. Okay. So if you want to go to slide 2, please. I'll put my glasses on. I'm sorry, I can't see anything otherwise. I left GKN at the end of 2002 and moved to California, started the first corporation, which was primarily in the automotive sector, which was designing and developing and then manufacturing performance systems for special edition vehicles, such as a Dodge Viper, Chevrolet Corvette, special TRD edition vehicles for Toyota, primarily exhaust systems, braking systems, and induction systems. We then started also a second company, APP Impex Inc., which was primarily used to develop export sales throughout 65 countries of primarily US-made products. Again, the same thing, primarily braking systems. Then in 2010, we added a range of braking systems which we developed for armored vehicles, primarily for NATO and the United Nations, We supply today worldwide to all of the armed forces, to people like the FBI, special forces out of Fort Bragg, anything which needs special braking systems, that's kind of what we do. We then added our own distribution networks in Europe, in the Middle East, and then in China, which we built up then from about 2015 onwards. And in 2018, we merged our carbon fiber manufacturing facilities, which we had started in China, with our automotive business there, and created a automotive carbon fiber aero parts manufacturing facility. We're now moving to create a second facility for carbon fiber here in the US. But to break it down, our divisions, we have 4 main divisions. We have the performance aftermarket, as I said, that's 65 countries worldwide. We supply also, obviously, the US market, both through B2B and also B2C networks. We have the defense and security industry, as I talked about. We have the OEM parts and systems, which is the original first company that I started back in 2003. That's still going strong. We're still supplying Toyota, General Motors, Fiat Chrysler, nearly 20 years later. It's grown to a $40 million annual business. It's still our largest individual business. And then the 4th division is the carbon fiber manufacturing. Do you want to go? So we are specialized in carbon fiber manufacturing in aero parts for high-end vehicles, primarily today, Lamborghini, Maserati, Ferrari, McLaren, and Porsche. Do you want to move? I'm not seeing exactly, that's better, okay, sorry. If you go please to the next one, to the company profile. This is, I have 2 American partners who are or were both running the actual facility in Shanghai. And one of them, Howard, has just come back from Shanghai, and he will be running this facility here in Bellingham. Between them, they have 35 years of carbon composite manufacturing experience. And we do, as I said, primarily for high-end sports cars, but we also have a plan at a later date to do more with the vehicle manufacturers here in the US, specialist applications like for General Motors, like for Toyota, because it dovetails very nicely with the business we already have with them. This is just an overview of the facility in Shanghai. Basically, it's a low and medium volume with a high aesthetic finish. Basically, depending whether which process you're using, you will make perhaps hundreds of a particular part per year, but you won't make thousands. We will have a high-end paint booth because it's got a high aesthetic finish. And we will be using various different lamination processes, whether it's using an autoclave, which is temperature and pressure, or whether it's resin infusion, which is temperature and vacuum. Do you want to go on to the next one? A little bit about how we do it. Everything we design is done on CAD. We 3D scan parts. The tooling is done with a plug and then a mold. The engineering itself, because these parts are structural parts, they have to pass finite element analysis and computational fluid dynamic analysis to make sure that these parts provide obviously downforce or aerodynamic improvements, and don't fly off the vehicle when going at high speeds. Materials, traditionally, it's your carbon fiber, various weaves, the twills. What we have done in the left-hand corner, though, as a very special material is the forged SMC carbon fiber. This is a process that there are, at best, 3 or 4 companies worldwide who actually are able to control this process. So this is really one of the key selling points of what we make. And here you see it. It's splitters, it's hoods, it's wings, it's aerodynamic parts for the higher end vehicles for sale here in North America. Let's go to the facility. Well, it's a Cold War bomb blast resistant building. It's got a 70-foot indoor shooting range and a walk-in gun safe. Some creativity needed to turn this into a world-class carbon fiber manufacturing facility. And it's quite unusual that actually the layout of the building does actually lend itself to being used as a carbon fiber manufacturing facility. There, you'll see up in the top left-hand corner, there's also a black area there, which is where Port of Bellingham has kept their archives, and there are other areas or other segments of the building which are not shown. One of the interesting parts for us in this is that, yes, we can take and use successfully 12,673 square feet of this building for a carbon fiber manufacturing facility. But we'd like to hope at the end of 5 years, maybe earlier, that we will want to extend our square footage. And this is something that this particular location does offer, which is a very important point for us. The total square footage is 24,000 square feet. And we'd like to think that at some point in the future that we're going to be coming knocking and wanting to have more of that. But we're working at the moment on the 12,673 square feet we're talking about. This is the equipment we're going to be putting in there: a large autoclave, a large curing oven, walk-in freezers for the pre-preg carbon fiber, a computer-controlled automated cutting table, 25-foot long high-tech spray booth, and various other equipment. This in itself is $500,000 of CapEx. This is something also just to mention, we are privately financed. All our companies have been privately financed. We financed everything out of our own cash flow. We have no bank debt. And all of the investment we will make in this facility, and there's, as I said, $500,000 just there in machines. There's $250,000 in leasehold improvements that we will have to make as well to make this facility work as a manufacturing facility. And then there's the head count, which we expect during these 2 years to have implemented. It's going to be, depending on how quickly we ramp up, it might sort of move a little bit from year to year, but we've put in basically 12 in year 1 and 12 in year 2. So we'll come out with about 25 new jobs in this facility within a 2-year period. This actually works as a benchmark quite well with our Shanghai facility. We have there actually a little bit more. We have 25 to 28 people in a facility which is approximately the same size, but we will be short to medium term looking to implement some robotic activities within the process, just because we have to be aware that the labor cost here in Washington even taking into account the 25% tariffs we have at the moment on importing product from China, the labor costs are on average between 2 to 3 times what they are in the Shanghai facility. So we're going to have to be a lot smarter and a lot more efficient in how we manufacture these products. So that's basically it. I'm open for any questions you may have.
Mr. Shepherd?
Well, I'm sure I speak for the rest of us. The introduction of more well-paying manufacturing jobs is really exciting to us. And I really thank you for bringing your company and taking, having faith in our community and the port to be partners with you. So I'm just thrilled to see this presentation, see these type of operations that are going to happen at port property. It fits really well with being right next to our airport and the cross-border opportunities. That border will open again. It's going to happen. And we will be through this. We're really well positioned as a great location for trade and manufacturing here. So I'm thrilled to see this, and please let us know if we can be of assistance as we move forward.
Thank you. One of the things, we've already reached out to Western Washington because they have a composites program and all of that. That's something where I think working together with the port and with Western Washington, there's potentially quite an interesting intern program and potentially, obviously, in the future, jobs for engineering graduates. Which might fit quite well, because I mean, if you have engineering graduates, you'd like to actually keep them here once they've graduated.
That's the dream. That's the dream. So, we've got a skilled technical college that works with this type of design work, and then provides the opportunity to continue on to Western, and hopefully that creates that pathway and that pipeline that we're all hoping for. That's it for me. Thank you. Mr. Briscoe?
Well, thank you for bringing your company to our county. I appreciate that greatly. It's exciting to see technology come here, and we welcome you with open arms, and anything we can do, don't hesitate to call us as commissioners and let us know what's on your mind.
Very good. That's very kind of you.
I echo what they said, and my first comment is, man, I wish I had your career.
You just want parts for your truck.
I could put 600 horsepower in a Toyota, which I assume you can do.
Actually, yes. It's funny. What sort of Toyota do you have?
Oh, I don't have it yet. But if you can make a 600 horsepower Toyota, I'm all in.
Now your wife's watching,
Well, Toyota's our biggest customer and has been for many years. And we do a lot of the Toyota TRD Pro Series.
Right.
Supply components for all of the different Pro Series vehicles.
Yeah, don't stop. Can I just have a bunk in your office somewhere?
So I was going to comment that this is Rob Fix, Executive Director. Jeremy, we haven't met, but I was going to comment that anyone with a longboard and a Porsche in their slideshow is okay with me. Welcome to the port.
Okay.
Definitely welcome to the port.
Well, what I'd like to do once we are up and running and in production, and my guess is, being realistic, it's going to be midsummer, with all machines and all processes. What we'd like to do is do an open invitation to both the port and to any interested of the Bellingham population to come and have an open day so they can see what we're doing.
Yeah, and as a father of nothing but girls, if I need a testosterone fix, can I just come down and hang out for a while?
Oh yeah, don't worry. We have a bunch of cool cars down there as well.
Shut up. Thank you very much. We welcome you, and I'm sure you'll be a welcome addition to this town, and you will find a lot of friends here. Thank you.
And Jeremy, when you're ready for that kind of open house, let us know. We'll work with you on that to make sure the right people get there.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'll set up chairs.
I'm
So
not
Carrie,
sure
we're
you
ready
would
for the
consider the-
motion. Would you? Do you mind? Did we lose Carrie or should I do it?
No, I'm here. Motion by the Port Commission to approve the airport
A motion by the
industrial.
Port Commission to approve the Airport Industrial Park lease between the Port of Bellingham and APP Impex Inc., doing business as Advanced Performance Parts for premises located at 3928 Williamson Way, Bellingham, Washington, also described as lease area number 7 of the BLI Airport General Binding Site Plan. Any other comments? Commissioner?
Thanks for doing my job.
I'm there for you. Commissioner Shepard?
No further comments.
All right, let's go for a vote. Mr. Shepard?
I'm yes.
Mr. Briscoe?
Yes, yes.
And I'm an all-in. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, commissioners.
Okay.
So we've got 15 minutes. Do you want to go to the next one, or do you guys, you commissioners, want to take a break and do the public comment? We've got to squeeze it in. Do you think we can get through this one and do public comment when we're done? Want to power through, or how you feeling?
I think this one should be pretty short.
Yeah, I don't
Go.
sure it's gonna be quick.
Okay. Carrie, would you please?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, just making sure. Commission motion authorizing the executive director to execute a purchase and sale agreement in the amount of $270,000 and all other transactional documents necessary to close the transaction between Romain Electric Corporation and the Port of Bellingham for the port's purchase of the building and land located at 1030 C Street in Bellingham.
Thank you, Carrie. Good afternoon, commissioners. For the record, Shirley McFerrin, Real Estate Director. The commission asked staff to take a look at this property when Romain Electric vacated the property, and we did. It does need some work, but we were able to strike a deal for $270,000, which we believe is a reasonable price for the property. It's land. The land is about 5,400 square feet. The building is about 2,464 square feet. The property is adjacent to our other water-reliant real estate holdings. And you may recall we have put literally millions of dollars into this waterfront property. And it feels like this should be in the public trust. So we believe that we can lease the property for roughly $1,300 a month at a minimum, which would yield us a 5.9% rate of return. The one thing that I will tell you is the agreement releases the seller of any environmental claims, which we have. Brian's group, Environmental, has done some preliminary investigative inquiries, and the seller is not aware of any environmental concerns. Keep in mind that the property falls within the central waterfront remediation site, and that it could be included in that cleanup effort. So we highly recommend moving forward with purchase of this property if the commission's so inclined. And that concludes my presentation.
Commissioner Shepard?
Yeah, first question for Shirley. What is the building as is something that you think we would be successful in leasing out pretty easily, or do we need to do a lot of work? Do we need to build a new building? What's the short and long term for this?
I think the short term is we could lease it as is with some minor improvements, maybe some flooring, some paint, etc. I think we could get $1,300 a month out of it. Over the long haul, I think that it makes sense to demo that building someday and do something terrific on that site, because keep in mind the property behind it We have a proposed letter of intent to acquire that property. So it makes complete sense to add this all to our portfolio. But I will say in truth that it does need some work, and it does have some water intrusion in the basement, which we will resolve. But out of the gate, I still think it makes sense at $270,000 and a 5.9% rate of return.
Okay, thanks. My second question is probably for Brian, and it's about what do we know about the historic use of the property, and what are we should expect about historical potential for contamination, historic carriers that we may be able to utilize, and are we comfortable with this release of environmental liability?
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. And I'll try to speak up, make sure I can be heard this time. We didn't approach it as our typical approach where we would have gone into and done a lot of due diligence and sampling. But based on what we know about the site, we have done sampling around it for other purposes, and we haven't seen a huge problem that we couldn't identify with something else. It didn't seem like there was anything that jumped out at us from the historic use, other than the fact that it's just in a long-term marine trades area, and there is a potential for some kind of contamination. That being said, like Shirley mentioned, it is right next to a 55-acre Modca site that is, the whole area over there that we could definitely roll this into and address as part of that cleanup project. So based on the advantages of this site versus the risk, we're comfortable with pursuing this. And we did leave in some provisions to potentially pursue historic insurance carriers if there are any. We don't know that there are, but that we could look at that as a potential if that did come up.
Holly hasn't combed the catacombs yet for all of the paperwork.
Not yet.
Find those historic carriers yet. Okay, we'll do that if needed.
Can I do a follow along, Michael, on that just for a sec? Were they manufacturing anything? Do you know?
I do not know off the top of my head.
There is a rumor that they were making transformers a while back on that site, but it really hasn't been confirmed.
How long ago? PCB days?
We just don't know that, Commissioner.
Yeah, and that was the concern that we had, was that there's potential PCB. But when we did the sampling in and around that area, we didn't see any mineral oil type of foot fingerprint that would be associated with that. So we think that the risk there is fairly well. It didn't look like it was an issue that we thought we needed to pursue further.
Well, visual is not enough. They haven't been making PCBs though since the late 1980s.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, Ex-Commissioner. I was saying that we did, oftentimes mineral oil is associated with transformers, and then the PCBs would be kind of co-located with that. And we didn't see a mineral oil footprint in some of the analysis we did around the buildings in that area. So we were, we were more comfortable given that information.
These were cores that were drilled, correct, Brian?
That's right.
And tested?
Correct.
Commissioner Briscoe? Great.
No question.
Shepard, were you done?
I was done. Thank you.
Mr. Briscoe?
No questions.
Yeah, the contamination just makes me a little nervous, but I want the site.
All I can tell you is it's a pretty small basement in that place, and I was in there when I was a young boy when Charlie Doucette owned it. Always electrical repair work done there. They did windings, they built generator ends, they did all kinds of motor stuff. Your standard industrial electrical stuff, basically. As far as transformers being built there, not that I can recall. But that doesn't mean at some point in time when I wasn't around, they didn't do something with that. But to the best of my knowledge, that was not what was done there. Unless it was before Charlie owned it. And I'm not sure I was born yet then.
So Shirley, just out of curiosity, if we decided that we wanted to do a scrape down and put it out for tender, You think we'd have many takers in the near future?
Are you talking about for renting or for sale?
For sale, just to put another building on it, put something that's more conducive to the area. You're going to put a lot of money into keeping it up.
Well,
Yes, I think we could definitely lease another building. We could tear that one down eventually, replace it with a better quality building and lease it. Because all of those buildings in that entire area are completely full. Even the property that we acquired from the city of Bellingham with the marine trace property on Rotor is completely full. So I don't imagine we're going to have any problem leasing this with a 5.9% rate of return. Of course, we'd like 7 or 8, so we'll do the best we can to get the best deal. But I think we'll lease it.
And I think Shirley was spot on with her earlier recommendation that there's a short-term and a long-term strategy here. And the short-term strategy is to lease it out and get some cash flow generated. But the long-term strategy is to combine this with the adjacent piece that we have the option or the prospect of buying in the future.
With no guarantees that we'll get that second piece. Right?
Well, but it's pretty locked in. I mean, there'd have to be some fancy maneuvering that I think legally we're going to object to in order for us not to get that piece, right? This is tied to that Harris Avenue property and FMIP that we just did. Our expectation is that that piece will be ours as he develops that property over in Fairhaven.
Agreed.
Agreed. Any other questions, Mr. Shepherd, Mr. Briscoe?
No other questions.
I have none.
All right, I'll read the motion. Commission motion authorizing the executive director to execute a purchase and sale agreement and all other transactional documents necessary to close the transaction between Romain Electric Corporation and the Port of Bellingham for the port's purchase of the building and the land located at 1030 C Street in Bellingham.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Shepherd?
I'm a yes.
Commissioner Bell, it's unanimous. Thank you, Shirley. Thank you, Brian.
Very much.
Okay, so we still have another 5 minutes. Let's maybe move on to other business. Gentlemen, if you're prepared for that, Commissioner Shepherd.
Yeah, I just had 2 questions. One, Rob, do you have any update for us on the Fisherman's Pavilion and the kitchen needs there? I know we had talked once, I think, about a kitchen trailer on wheels. Do you have any more info on that, and what would that look like in practice?
So right now, as far as the pavilion goes, we have you have approved, I should say, phase 1 of the pavilion. It's under contract. It's starting construction, and we are working on the needs of the dockside market to have some sort of preparation kitchen. I'm not sure exactly what that looks like at this point in time. I do have a pavilion stakeholders meeting scheduled for this Thursday. Port staff will be in attendance, the Commercial Fishermen's Association, the Working Waterfront Coalition, some folks from the dockside market, and some folks from Seafeast. All will be there to discuss how we go forward best to do or accommodate this preparation need or processing need that the fishermen have to sell their goods. So I guess the short answer is I don't have a lot to tell you right now, but I should have a lot more after Thursday. Port staff is very much looking into the trailer solution because it will be the most affordable. We're talking about $100,000 versus millions of dollars, and it also can come to fruition much quicker. And it has the ability to be mobile. Right now, we've got dockside market taking place at both Gate 5 and Gate 7. Which gate it ends up permanently being at, we're unsure of. Having a mobile kitchen could be beneficial to that gate kind of moving around.
Yeah, that was my follow-up is if we have any vision for what that, if there is going to be a consolidation. I was down there a couple weeks ago for the first time, and one, it's a fantastic operation. I'm so glad we have that. But, I went to Gate 7 first and bought something from Desire, and I was kind of looking around for the rest of it, wondering where it was, and then I wandered over and found the rest of it at Gate 5, and It's good for people to be able to wander around our harbor and understand all the work and good stuff that's going on. But it did leave me just a little bit confused about where to go. And from what I understand is there has been some historic precedence for selling out of Gate 7 and wondering what that means for consolidation in one location. I know that Gate 5 location also gets a lot of wind and rain when we've got foul weather. And so I'm just trying to figure out if we're in the best spot.
All good points, Commissioner. I think Dockside Market, Sea Feast, and the Port are all working through those exact issues.
Okay. Rob gave a very politically sensitive answer. I'm going to wait for Bobby to give a more opinion one.
I'm throwing out am I got a guy that's getting tossed under the bus or what?
It's just an invitation. I just opened the door.
No, thank you, Michael. I would point out that Rob kind of was easy on the time constraints here for doing a phase 2 at the pavilion that we are moving into now. Just so people understand, you're maybe 2 years plus on permitting. You're 3 years out by the time you get it all built, probably. And 3 years is a long time to wait to progress with our sales down there. I mean, this thing is taking off. It's going to do better and better each time it's there. It does need to be centralized. Whether it's Gate 5, Gate 12, Gate 50, whatever gate it's going to be at, it needs to be centralized. Because as Michael pointed out, when the weather's crappy, people come down, they come to that one point, and by the time they get their stuff there, they're probably getting a little cold, a little wet maybe, and then they got to figure out where to go a couple blocks away to get what else they wanted to get. So I think it would benefit the dockside sales greatly to have it in one location. So I would agree with Commissioner Shepherd that maybe and hopefully that the folks in charge will go that direction. I would certainly appreciate that. I think it's going to be a great deal. I think the mobile kitchen is a way better deal personally than the commissary added to our pavilion. It's mobile. It can be used for more events. It can be moved around. Tiffany would probably like to have something like that to move around at her various events when it's sitting idle. It's a much better investment. It's a much cheaper way to go, and I think it's a much better deal for the public. So that's kind of my input. I'm probably going to zoom in on Thursday and just listen. I don't want to say anything, but I'd like to hear what people are talking about. But I think Michael had some spot on information there of the confusion that can go on, especially in our, and I'm not profiling our elderly population. I know I get confused a lot easier these days when I'm trying to figure out what's where. And if it's wet and cold, not going. So anyhow.
I take offense to that. Elderly population.
I said it just for you.
Rob, would you invite us all to that meeting on Thursday?
I certainly can. It becomes an open public meeting at that point. And what I was trying to avoid is this becoming a popularity contest to who can bring the most people to the meeting. I tried to invite some key stakeholders that I think have an interest. And I'd hate to see it turn into, we got 100 people there and we can't get anything done. But you are all always welcome to our meetings. So if you all want to attend, I'll send out an invite and we'll announce it as a public meeting.
Well, that being said, maybe we could do this in a different manner. Maybe you can record it and give it to us shortly thereafter so that we can watch it, because I certainly don't want to turn it into a public meeting for the stakeholders and what have you there. It inhibits people from speaking, and I certainly would like people to speak their minds.
I like the idea of recording it and distributing it, if that's okay with the other two commissioners.
Perfectly fine with me.
Yeah, I'm fine. Or if Bob, you want to attend and report back to us with any highlights, either way is fine with me.
No, I'm good. And sometimes when a commissioner is attending a Zoom meeting like that, it will inhibit the progress of the meeting. Sometimes people won't say what they would like to say, so on and so forth. So as long as we can see what went on shortly thereafter, it would be good with me.
Thank you.
That was all That's all my other business, Ken. Thanks.
Commissioner Briscoe, do you have any?
No, I was kind of going to speak to the pavilion commissary a little bit. And that was about all I was thinking about. I do, well, maybe. It keeps chewing on me, and we've talked about it internally. And I'm sure my fellow commissioners have looked at the non-paying number that we were distributed here recently. And frankly, I was kind of appalled at what the ports owed. And some of the comments by the people who were asked to pay up, and in particular, some of the boathouse owners in Blaine. So I'd like to go on record, this commissioner would like to go on record as saying, don't tell me you're not going to pay me. Let's work it out. Because if you want to be nasty, I'm certainly sure that I could be nasty as well. And I would just as soon work something out that works for everyone so we can move forward. But don't tell the public of Whatcom County you're not going to pay your bill to them. This isn't just a government agency you're not paying. This is the people of Whatcom County who own the port of Bellingham. So have some respect for your fellow people that own the property on which you keep your stuff that you're telling them you're not going to pay. I would like you to rethink that opinion. That's all I have for other business.
I'll double down on that, Bobby, and say this was not part of COVID relief in any way, shape, or form. And so you have my support in any enforcement we need to do on that.
This has been going on well before COVID.
Well, and quite frankly, I just assume, since we're paying Mr. Sitkin to sit here, we might as well say, hey, John, what can we do, dude?
Well, we can get together with real estate and start looking at the collection, start getting it going.
Okay. I'll do the numbers on what that cost us per word. Thank you.
I heard you say 5:30, Ken, so I'm trying to be respectful.
Commissioner Briscoe, anything else?
No, I have nothing. Thank you. And Happy New Year to everyone.
I'll do mine really quickly. Rob, you know of any wind damage from the last couple of windstorms?
I haven't heard from all aspects of the port, but it seemed, and so if anyone is on here from the port that has wind damage, please unmute yourself and speak up. But it seems like we fared fairly well, actually. The marinas and the shipping terminal, everyone came out pretty well. Some minor damage here and there, but nothing significant. We've certainly fared worse in lesser storms, so we got lucky.
Yeah. And then any update on the granary leases? Do we have that second floor leased up yet? Are they moving in? Do we know?
Yeah, I believe that the last commission meeting we reported that, or Harcourt reported it had been leased. The company name has been made public, and I'm forgetting it now.
But we haven't seen anybody move in yet, right?
No, but I believe that the tenant improvements are being done, and permits are being pulled for that. So it's actively being built, and we're in discussions with them on some more parking, which they need for that second floor.
Yeah, I just had a couple people ask me why they hadn't seen any movement down there, so I just wanted that on the record. My last piece of other business is I was wondering if anybody at the port could put a collage together of the many faces of Brian Gowan through the pandemic. Because I don't know if you've noticed the metamorphosis, but it has been all over the board.
I'm not sure his own family could do that.
Me and Mr. Birdsall's beard, there's quite a show we could put on. You're going to do that for me, Brian? All right.
I see a thumbs up.
All right. That being said, that's all the, thank you, Alan. That's all the other business I have. Any public comment now that it's past 5:30?
Go ahead and unmute yourself and make yourself known if you have a comment.
I'll give it 10. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, thank you for the first meeting of the year. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for the honor of what?
I have one thing I want you to go ahead and finish, and I have one thing I want to say before you close the meeting.
I was going to close the meeting, so please do.
I'd like to thank our staff at the Port of Bellingham, our legal folks, and our executive director, as well as my fellow commissioners, for doing the job they've done through 2020, which was a hell of a mess. And I think that one of the, I really believe that one of the shiny spots in Whatcom County that maybe was a focal point for people to keep moving forward and keep their act together was the Port of Bellingham and its staff. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner. That being said, I would say meeting adjourned. Thank you all.